Good afternoon, everyone. Give it a few more minutes and then we'll get started. People are beginning to trickle in now. We'll give it another couple minutes and then we'll get started. Right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the Change Management Overview webinar. My name is Jean-Paul. I'm Head of Client Services for Spoke. And with me today is our lead trainer for change management, Andrea Bone. Okay, now, change is inevitable. It is part of any organization's growth and evolution, but navigating it effectively can be one of the most challenging aspects of leadership and team dynamics. That's why today's webinar focuses on change management, a crucial process for ensuring transitions are not just managed, but optimized for success. Now, in this session, we'll explore the strategies, tools, best practices that empower organizations to adapt and thrive within the face of change. Now, whether you're dealing with shifts in technology, organizational restructuring, market evolution, mastering change management can be the difference between disruption and innovation. What can you expect over the next hour? We will go through the principles of effective change management, overcoming resistance to change, building a culture of adaptability within organizations, and real-world examples of successful change initiatives. Towards the end of the session, we will then do the Q&A session. However, during the actual live presentation, if you do have any questions, please pop them into the chat and we'll try and answer the question as soon as possible for you. But without further ado, I'll pass you over to Andrea. Andrea.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, what does change management mean? What does it really mean to an organization? Well, that's a very good question. Yeah. As you're aware, that organizations are needing to adapt. Yeah. And as they adapt, one of the things that you'll need to take into consideration, lots of change management. Yeah. So just be mindful, it is a journey. And one of the things that we need to make sure is that we get buy-in from stakeholders. So that's staff, suppliers, customers, not just about projects. And unfortunately, what actually happens in the real world, we start projects and we start programs, we go through, we roll out into business as usual, and then we close the projects, we close the programs, and we don't realize benefits. And then the next question is, well, why didn't we realize benefits? Well, it's because the user didn't want it. And there'll be loads of examples in your own organizations why people don't use IT systems, equipment, one of the things that you need to be mindful when you are rolling out programs and projects, you need to also take the stakeholders on that journey. And it takes strategy. You have to think very carefully about the impact on change. You've got to think about what does the end user really want from the change, and you need buy-in. And this is why we talk about change management and the methodologies that you can use. You know, and this is quite an interesting. It's not just about being good at program and project management. You know, one of the things you need to be good at, great at, is taking people through this journey. Yeah. As it says on this slide, companies that survive the longest are the ones that work out what is uniquely they can give to the world, not just growth or money. They excel. Yeah. And they have the ability to make people happy. Amazon is just one of those examples. Okay. And what you can see here at the bottom on the right hand corner is Charles Handy. This statement came from Charles Handy. You may not have come across Charles Handy. He's British. Yeah. And as we go through some of the techniques and methodologies, most of them come from Harvard. But he's British, so we have to promote him. He's from Oxford. And he writes lots of little penguin books, 1960s, and you go, 1960s, yeah, that's old. That's what, nearly 60 years ago. Yeah, well, over 60 years ago now. Yeah, most of the research for change management came out of the Second World War, the 1940s. And some of the best gurus that I'm going to talk about are around the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Yeah. One of the things you need to ask yourself when you're doing change management, is it really necessary and is it important at this time? Okay. So a lot of organizations here probably have rolled out SharePoint. Artificial intelligence is the new one on the block. Is it really necessary? And is it important to us? Yeah. What will it bring to the business? What will it bring to the individuals? Yeah. One of the things when you're taking people through the journey, people in general do not like change. Yeah. And one of the things it talks about here, it talks about focus and scope of change. So when you're rolling out change, you've got to think about the history of what they've already been through. And if you've been through a lot of history of change, and I'm pretty sure most of the organizations here would have gone change, 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 and then you're introducing more change. What that actually means is that you could find yourself in what they call change fatigue. Change fatigue is where people start going off with stress, don't want to do the change. Yeah. Um, Change capability. This is an interesting one. This is the ability of the organization to manage the change and provide support to individuals to succeed with change. Yeah. So one of the things that you need to think about when you're rolling out change, are you up for change for a start off? Yeah. And you should be able to get that information from staff surveys, just walking around the organization, having chats with people. And I appreciate now most of you are working from home. So you might have to have your teams meetings and say, look, are we up for change? Is it a good idea that we come in and have a chat together? There are some benefits of doing face to face. Yeah. The other thing is you also need to think about the skills. Have you got the skills to make the change? How much training needs to be involved? And the key question is always, how much money have you got to spend? Unfortunately, with change management, people think, they'll just pick it up. They don't need any training. They've done this before. That's not always true. Yeah. And to get the benefit out of it, you need to plan it just like you would plan a program or a project. Yeah. The next bullet point, it talks about commitment. Yeah. One of the things that you see is there's lots of enthusiastic commitment or leaders at the beginning of a program or project. And then as you go further into the program and project, what happens is people go, oh, I'm not really that committed now. It's starting to be a little bit painful. People don't know where the change is going to happen, how it's going to affect them. So one of the things you need to establish at the very beginning of the project or program, that they're committed, and you keep that commitment throughout the program and project. And also, you need to make sure that when you come to the end of your program and project, you still keep the commitment, you still get people to use whatever you've rolled out, because if you don't get that commitment, what will actually happen is you won't get any benefits. And the whole point of doing change goes back to the very first point. Why need to change? Yeah, it's important to the business and we need to see some benefits. Yeah. The final point is talking about, do we know how the change will affect individuals and teams? Yeah. One of the things you need to do is spend time with individuals and think about what you actually want from this change. I fully appreciate organizations say, oh, this is a great idea. This is going to change the business. This is what we're going to do. And then the individual says, oh, excuse me, just wait a minute. And the organization goes, yes. And they go, what's it in it for me? Oh, no, it's going to be great for the organization. It's going to be brilliant for the organization. And you go, yeah, but why would I want to change? Yeah, as an individual. Yeah, you're coming along and you're doing some restructuring, you're introducing a new IT system, you're moving me from one building to another building. That's not good for me. So it is important in the very beginning of your program and project, you actually understand how it affects individuals. The other thing is it talks about here and how it affects teams. If you're doing things like restructuring, one of the things that you need to be mindful, if I've been working with Tom and I really like Tom, yeah, and then you come along and you go, I need you to work with Sally. And I go, don't like Sally. Why would I want to do the change? I wouldn't. Yeah. So the other thing is you need to see how it affects your teams, how it affects individuals, and you should be able to pick that up from your staff surveys. Yeah? So these are the questions you need to ask yourself, yeah, and you need to plan for them. Right? Here's some interesting facts, and it's quite interesting. Only 30% of change initiatives succeed. Success is an interesting statement here because what is success? And programs and projects, when they come to an end, they tend to say, oh, we've rolled this out, this is really successful. But the true success relies on you getting benefits, and most benefits happen at the end of a program or project. Yeah. And continue to build on that. So it's talking about continuous improvement. 79% or 79.7%, yeah, need to adapt their business every 2 to 5 years. And that is because we are going through some really rapid technology. You know, artificial intelligence will change the way businesses operate. The majority of people on this call will be working from home. If I said to you 10 years ago, you'll be able to work from home, you go, no, don't be silly. Yeah. So we have to adapt. Yeah. Um, the third bullet point is interesting because it says 1 in 3 CEOs fail to achieve the desired outcome from past transformational activities. Programs and projects are good at rolling things out into business as usual operations. but they never ever make it to the next step of benefit realization, continuous improvement. And that's why this statement is written here. Yeah. And that is because people haven't taken the end user, the customer, the stakeholder through the journey. Yeah. And that means providing training, providing support, holding their hands, making them feel good about the change. Yeah. 2/3 of workers experience burnout. Yeah. And the question is, why do we suffer with burnout? Yeah. Yeah. One of the things you need to be mindful of is that when you're doing change, one of the things you need to do is give people time to settle down. So you roll out change, give a period of time for people to settle down, get used to whatever the change is. Then you can introduce more change, settle down, and carry on. But of course, we don't do that, do we? No. We go from change, 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 change. And one of the problems with that, with transformational change, is that people don't know who their line managers are, don't know what their roles and responsibilities are, don't know who they are working with, what teams they're working with. And eventually it will cause burnout. Yeah? And people go off with sick, people aren't committed. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure you've seen it in your own organisations. You look at 9 o'clock and you go, oh, it's 9:10. All right. Oh, it's 5:10. I finish at 5. So guess what? I'm going to wash up my cup. I'm going to go and get my coat. Yeah. People aren't interested. And when you get that, that means that they just have apathy and people don't want to embrace change. Yeah. Which is not good for the business and not good for their mental health either. Yeah. Ability to reach a goal in life is often defined as success. Yeah. How often do people actually meet their goal? How often do people actually sit down and say, what is your goal? What do you want to get out of working in this organization? What can we do to support you? Yeah. What training can we provide? What skills do you have? Now, that's an interesting statement here. What skills do you have? Yeah. When you join an organization, it's as if we sort of like go, yeah, I know you joined for the job, and this is your CV. But what we're going to actually do is put across through that CV, we're not even going to consider what you did in your previous career because you're now doing this job. And you will be surprised how many skills from previous jobs people can bring into your own organization. So I'll just give you an example of that. Working with some of the clients that I have, some of them are large government departments, and employees, staff, have been working in the retail industry. And you think, why don't we tap into that? Because the retail industry is very good at customer service, very good at understanding the customer, and we could bring those skills into this organization. Yeah. So just be mindful. Your staff might have skills that you're unaware of, and someone goes, well, you're qualified as a solicitor, and I appreciate you're working in finance, but hey, we've got those skills. Let's use them. Yeah. And organizations who believe that they're capable of growth and are more likely to achieve success. This is talking about the senior management going, look, we can do this. Yeah. We can go out there and we can be really good at what we do and we can grow. Yeah. And then that comes from having the confidence, yeah, at senior management level to go out and tell people. Yeah. So those are just some interesting facts, yeah, around organizations and why some organizations are very, very successful, some not so successful, shall we say. Yeah. So why do you change management? Apart from I've said, we take people on the journey. Yeah. One of the things that you'll find when you're doing quite large transformational change, you'll have a lot of resistance. Yeah. Um, and the other thing also to be mindful is that if you've been with an organization a very, very long time, say 10, 15 years, and then someone comes along and goes, I need you to change. And you go, why do you need me to change? Oh, but the process you're doing needs to change. Well, I've been doing this process for 15 years and no one's ever mentioned it before. Yeah, I know, but we need to change because it's great for the organization. Again, this goes back to people say, what's in it for me? Yeah. The other thing also to be mindful of, if you come across people like this in your own organization, they are what we call a rotten apple in a barrel because they could have a big influence on other people within the organization. Yeah. So if you're rolling out an IT system and they go, oh, I hate this new IT system, it's not what I want. I didn't get any, I didn't contribute to it. And then that has a knock-on effect to other people, has a knock-on effect for new people joining the organization. And then you go around again and you go, well, how's that new IT system? I hate this new IT system. And you go, that's interesting, Tom. You've only been here with the organisation 2 months. Yeah, well, I've been told the old system was better, and you go, that's quite an interesting statement. So just be mindful of that, and also be mindful that change is painful. People do not like change in general terms. So, how we're going to unlock that resistance? We're going to support and motivate individuals. Okay. So again, this goes back to the history of change within your organization and think, okay, what lessons can we learn from it? Did we give them the support? Did we give them the correct training? Or did we actually train them after the event, which happens a lot in organizations? Or did we not give them any training and just said, you know what, you'll pick it up? Yeah. So being proactive is a big thing to change management, and it should run along the side of your program and project plans. Yeah? So provide support and motivation. The third bullet point talks about draw from a range of professional approaches to implement change smoothly and effectively. So the idea is, and there's lots of different names for them. I'm going to call it a transformational change plan. You may call it a change impact plan. This runs along the side of your programs and projects. And the idea is the programs and projects should be touching points within the business as usual and going, look, are you happy with what's happening? Do we need to change things before it actually gets rolled out? Yeah. Have you had the training? Have you had the support? And so when you come to roll something out from a program and project, people go, yeah, we're happy. We know exactly what we're going to do. We know it's coming tomorrow. We've had the training. Great. We have all the instructions. Can't see any reason why change won't happen. And that's how you get a smooth rollout from programs and projects into BAU, business as usual. Yeah. Manage and inform key stakeholders. This is an interesting statement. One of the things that you'll find in the very beginning of programs and projects, there's loads of activity, loads of comms saying it's coming, yeah. And then they just disappear. And you go, where's that project gone? Where's that program gone? Yeah. And then possibly 2 years later, loads of activity, loads of comms, and saying, you know what, we're going to roll something out to you tomorrow. And you go, I thought you'd disappeared. No, we're definitely coming. Oh, but I'm not ready. Yeah. So the idea is that you should be doing comms throughout your program and project, just keeping people informed. Now, that could be done, I don't know, monthly. Even if you've got nothing to say from the program and project, you should say, look, we're still here. We're still working through all the requirements. Don't worry, we haven't disappeared. Yeah. One of the things you could do is speed up implementation of change initiatives. Okay. So what that means is if you're going too slow, people go, I'm not motivated, things are going too slow. So, or on the other end that I mentioned, you could be going too fast for them. And if you're going too fast, you're going to have change fatigue. So one of the things you need to do is match the pace of change with how quickly business as usual can absorb the change. Yeah. So all of that should run along the side of your program and project. Now, PPM linked to change success. There is a direct link between program and project management methodologies. Yeah. What you've got here at the very top is you've got strategic business vision. Now, as an organization, you need to know exactly where you're going in the future. That's your vision. Okay? And when you understand the vision, then you can understand the strategic objectives. When you understand the strategic objectives, then you can understand what programs and projects you should be running. And they fit into a portfolio. Yeah. And the idea is that every project and program should be strategically aligned. Yeah. And if they're strategically aligned, that means in theory, when you start rolling out, people should start be using them, and then you start seeing the benefits. Now, there's lots of methodologies out there. There's Prince2, MSP, Agile PM, which you may be familiar with. But if you can keep to these methodologies as tightly as you can, and I appreciate a lot of you are adapting or tailoring some of these methodologies, it will just make change management a lot easier. Yeah. And that's the big change between version 2 and version 3 of the change management qualification with APMG. Version 3 has a lot of agile and how to prepare people going through an agile project. So lots of rollouts as you're going along in the project. Okay. Also, just be mindful, people might have said to you, you know what, Prince2 is old-fashioned. Don't use Prince2. Prince2 is a very good project management methodology, just like Agile PM. Yeah. What you've got here on the right-hand side is talking about how change management is wrapped around programs and projects. So one of the things you're going to do is you're going to assess the change. Yeah. And the way you assess for change is understanding the business. Yeah. And I tend to use, and you'll remember this, POTI. POTI stands for processes, organization, technology, and information. That's what it stands for. So one of the things that you need to think about is, what are the processes do we have now? What is the organization? So when I talk about organization here, I'm talking about culture, numbers, staff numbers. Yeah. Leadership would go in there as well. What leadership style do we want? Technology. A lot of you may have legacy systems, and information is talking about data. And that's what you do when you assess the change. You also think about what do you want in the future, okay, and see what the gap is. So if the gap is quite big, yeah, so let me just give you an example just on processes. If your process is 80% are manual now, which is an as is, versus to be, %80 are automated, big jump. Yeah, and there's a gap here. This is big transformational change. Yeah. So that means you're going to have loads of support. You're going to have to take people through the journey. Yeah. Then you need to prepare for change. Okay. So one of the things that you'd be looking at is, do we need training? What sort of training? How many people are going to have training on this? Yeah. What support are we going to offer? Are we going to use super users, focus groups? And we're going to plan for it. And just be mindful, this plan will run alongside. This is your project plan. This is your change plan. Okay. And also here, I'll put some dots there. The change plan continues after the program or project's closed. And the reason is you want to see benefits. So you want people to continually use it. Okay. You're going to roll out change. Okay. So that's implement the change. So one of the things you need to make sure is, just before you roll it out here, have we had the training? Is everyone comfortable with the change? If, however, business as usual turns around and goes, no, we're not ready. You can't force change, because if you start forcing change, what will actually happen is output will drop. Okay. And people will get demotivated. They'll say, look, we're doing more work for less. It'll just cause major, major problems. Yeah. And then you won't see any of the benefits. And also, sustaining change is a big part of program and project management, because although the program and project has come to an end, one of the things you need to make sure is people carry on using it. Yeah. And look at continuous improvement. And then when things have settled down, you need to think about rolling out more change. Yeah. Otherwise, you might find yourself into a situation where, we've got this fancy IT system. No one's using it. No one has a clue how to use it. Yeah. And you go, that's interesting. So how much did it cost? Oh, it cost hundreds. Yeah. You go, So every time you think about programs and projects, also think about taking the people through the journey. Yeah. So that brings us on to APMG. Yeah. I mentioned the big difference between version 2 and version 3. Version 3 has got more agile in, okay? And APMG book is about organizational context and awareness. Yeah. And you may not have come across this word context, but it means the environment you're operating in. Yeah. And the way we look at it is we use PESTLE. I don't know whether you're familiar with that. That's a technique. PESTLE stands for political, economic, social, technology, legal, and environment. Yeah? So political, change in government, economic, inflation, seen this morning, social. This is talking about social trends and tends to be linked in with technology. So most people have smartphones, yeah, and these smartphones are like little computers. Technology, AI, big thing, or is going to definitely be a big thing in the next couple of years. Legislation, constantly changing, affecting the business. As you've probably seen this morning, a lot of companies are being affected by new legislation being brought out. Environmental, yeah, we're meant to be good to the world. So carbon neutral, not using plastic, solar panels. Yeah, that's how you assess the environment your organization's working in. Okay. And the other thing is, the other one we use is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So strengths of the business, weaknesses of the business, what opportunities the business can promote going outward facing, and any threat. Yeah, and changing legislation is a good example of threats. People and change. As I said earlier, people don't like change. Yeah. So one of the things that you might need to do is do an assessment. Are you up for change? Yeah. Are you in the right place to change? Yeah. If they've been through lots and lots of different types of change, they'll go, I'm just exhausted. I can't do any more change. Yeah. Leadership. Leadership is a big thing. You know, we need to be more team orientated. We need to get people to buy into the change. We need to ask their opinion. Yeah. We have moved away from a sort of like a command and control. You will do this, or yeah. And teams. Yeah. One of the things that you need to be mindful with teams is if you'll start moving people around from teams, and I like working with people in the team, I'm just going to get de-engaged. Yeah. And I'm going to go, you know what, I'm not interested. Okay. Stakeholders and comms. Yeah. One of the things this book talks about is identifying stakeholders. Yeah. And at the very beginning of your program or project, you'd identify stakeholders. But of course, as you're going along through the program and project, they change. Yeah. Some of the stakeholders, you want them to be highly motivated, very interested in what you're doing, and some less. So if you're working in a very competitive environment with other competitors, you don't really want your competitors to have a high interest in what you're doing. Yeah. Communication. Yeah. I appreciate a lot of you are possibly using Teams, not going into the workplace as much as you did. But and a lot of the organizations possibly have removed telephones. Yeah. But one of the things that you need to be mindful of, people like to have the interaction. Yeah. And when it comes to comms and change, face-to-face is far better than sending someone a text or sending someone an email. Years ago, they used to do off-site sort of like seminars where people were taken out of organisations for the weekend or for the day. Starting to come back, starting to see it to come back. This is really powerful because what it allows is CEOs, senior management team, to speak to all different types of people within the organisation. And that is a great communicator. Again, it really depends on how much money you have for comms. Yeah. And that leads to the final bullet point, work of change manager. Yeah. Project managers you'll be familiar with. Yeah. Most project managers have a couple of qualifications. Prince 2 is one, Agile PM is another. Most program managers have a qualification, such as managing successful programs. There is no difference with change management. It is an art. Yeah. And it's a very complex art. Yeah. Because if you do too much comms, you're just going to switch people off. If you do too little, then people won't be know what's happening when things are coming along. Yeah, you've also got to be quite thick-skinned because people will take it personally that you are changing and you are the front face of the change. So you'll sit down and go to Tom and go say, "Look, Tom, this is what's going to happen." And Tom goes, "I don't like this. It's not right, blah, blah, blah." And you go, "Look, I didn't make that decision." Okay. And so the idea is it is an art, it is a discipline in its own right. Yeah. And this is what we discuss in the change management study guide, how to overcome some of the resistance of change, how to overcome people being very negative. Yeah. And this just gives you an idea of the sort of things that we're going to cover on the APMG change course. Yeah. This one here, I'll just put start here. You may know it as target operating model. Or future operating model is another name for it. Or blueprint is another name. And the reason I'm writing all these different names, it really depends on what the organization's comfortable with. But one of the things when you do change management, you always need to know where are you now and where do you want to be. And if you don't know where you are now, then you're going to struggle to get where you want to be. Okay. And this course covers how you're going to build up as is versus to be. Yeah. This one on the top left-hand side is personas. I don't know whether any of you are familiar with personas, but banking industry, retail industry use personas. And it gives you a feel of what the customer wants now, but also what the customer wants in the future. Yeah. So I'll just give you an example of personas. The retail banking is looking at 18 to 24-year-olds, and you go, 18 to 24-year-olds, well, they're at university. They have banking apps, that, they'll have a credit card. But one of the things the retail banking is looking at is having 40 to 50-year mortgages. Yeah. And you're probably thinking, that's interesting. And the reason is people can't get on the housing market. Yeah. So they're already thinking about this, the banks, They want to be able to offer 40 to 50 years. Yeah. And that's how you use personas. Yeah. This one, 1965 Tuckman. Yeah. This is how the stages of the teams go through to develop. And so when you join a project team, you go through forming, and then you go through storming. And storming is when you're starting to question and starting to have a little bit of disagreement, arguments possibly. Yeah. Norming is when you're working together, but there's still room for improvement. And performing is quite difficult. When I talk to organizations, they go, oh yeah, we're high performing. Performing is when you're working as one, you have a social life outside of work together. Yeah, you're supporting each other. Yeah. This is the one, high performing teams is which Agile and Scrum promote. Yeah. So again, this would be covered on the course. Yeah. This is another guru that's covered on the course, which is Bridges. Bridges tends to be done for acquisitions and mergers. Yeah. Just give you some examples of acquisitions and mergers. Co-op and Summerfield went through Bridges. Yeah. One of the things that Co-op had to do was provide reassurance to the Summerfield staff, also honour the past, because you wouldn't go into another organisation and go, you know what, you're a load of rubbish. Yeah. And then take them through the transition. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of Summerfield staff either made the emotional commitment to stay with Co-op or left the organisation. Yeah. And that's when you got the new beginning, which is this. Is when people embrace the Co-op values and beliefs. Yeah. This one is Gluber-Ross. And Gluber-Ross's research is in the 1960s. And as I said, most of the gurus are, you know, the really good gurus are pre-80s, pre-90s. Gluber-Ross's research was about someone going through these emotions when they heard they had cancer. Yeah. Shock, can't believe I've got cancer. Denial, no, I don't have cancer. Anger, yeah. Bargaining, if I take my tablets, I'll get better. Yeah. Depression, and then coming out and accepting, you know, what's going to happen to me. But this is very valid for change, because people, when you tell people about the change, and that could be as simple as like rolling out a new IT system, shock. We've been using this system for the last 10 years. Why do we need a new one? Denial, we never have a new system. Anger, I'm using this system. Yeah, it's not right. Why do I need to have a new system? If we use the old system, can we not have the new system? So that's your bargaining. Depression, it's just difficult to get familiar with new technology. Yeah. And depending on what you're rolling out, you could see in the depression point on here, loads of people leave the organisation. Yeah. And then accept that we're going to have a new IT system. So let's make the best of it. Let's see what this system can do. Yeah. SharePoint's a good example of that. Yeah, you'll be surprised what SharePoint can and can't do. Yeah. Projects and programs, yeah, and portfolios. A portfolio is an overarching function, and inside it has programs and projects. One of the things, as I mentioned earlier, that try and keep us close to project management methodologies, yeah, and program methodologies as best you can, because change management methodologies wrap itself around it. Right. This is McKinsey here at the top right-hand corner. Yeah. This is really good technique or methodology of understanding where you are now and where you want to be. And what you do is you take each of these circles and go, right, what are our values and beliefs? Yeah. Now, what will our values and beliefs be in the next 5 years? Yeah. What is our strategy now? What is our strategy in the future? Systems is talking about IT and processes. So what systems do we have now? What systems do we want? Structures. A lot of organisations are quite hierarchical. A reports to B reports to C reports to D. But one of the things that organisations are trying to move to is a more flatter structure. Yeah. Style is talking about management style, leadership style. Leadership style is dramatically changing over the years. So in the 1970s, it was very much command and control. Yeah, you will do that. In the 90s, 2000, it was very much team orientated. And the style going forward is going to be, I don't think anyone's come up with the style yet, because a lot of you, as I said, are working from home and possibly only in the office a couple of days a week. So the management style or leadership style is going to have to change. Yeah. Skills we have now, skills we want in the future. Yeah. Staff numbers we have now, staff numbers we want in the future. Culture we want now, culture we want in the future. Yeah. And the last one, yeah, and there's many, many more that we'd go through in the course, and you're just having a little bit of a session about this, yeah, is one of the things you need to think about is doing an assessment, yeah, categorizing them, the impact on staff, identifying areas that are going to be impacted by the change. Is it going to be the whole organisation? Is it just going to be a little bit of the organisation? Do a bit of a gap analysis. Yeah. Do a little bit of profiling. Yeah. And then how much is it going to cost? Yeah. What are the organisational factors you need to take into consideration? Are people up for change, or are people dead on their feet with all the change that's taken place in the last 5 years? Yeah. How are we going to communicate with people? Yeah. So that, in a nutshell, is some of the theories and techniques that would be discussed in the change management course. There are many, many more to help you through the change. Yeah. I've just given you a flavour of some of them. So that just brings us into APM accredited change management course. These are the things that are going to be covered: resistance to change, motivating people, yeah, professional approach to smooth delivery. That's what it's talking about. Getting the best out of the change, pace of change accordingly, yeah. And it's talking about change professionals, yeah, and how they contribute to initiatives. And the word initiative is talking about programs and projects, yeah. So a change manager and a project manager will work closely together. Yeah. And qualification for the change management is independently accredited by the change management institution. It's a pathway if you want to go on and do more qualifications. Yeah. And it's certified by UCAS, United Kingdom Accreditation Services. Yeah. There's lots and lots of things we're going to cover in the syllabus with the change management, so such as stakeholders, such as giving you a flavour of Agile PM, flavour of project management in general terms, how to measure change, how to look at benefits. These are just many areas that we'd look at. Yeah. That brings us on to the different types of exams that you can take. Yeah. Some of you may have already done your research on APMG, change management. There are two exams. One is the foundation and one is the practitioner. Yeah. This is talking about what is covered in the foundation course. Yeah. It gives you a flavour of shaping change initiatives, context of change, which we mentioned, resistance, how to motivate people, yeah, ways to assess change impact, yeah, how are you going to measure, yeah, which are key metrics. Yeah. But then that leads us into the practitioner exam, which is slightly different, okay? The practitioner is all about having a case study and applying best practice to a case study. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about levers of change. Yeah. We're going to be looking at learning and developing support for change. Coaching is part of the practitioner course. Some of you might be already familiar with GROW, yeah, as a coaching technique. We're going to look at conflict, yeah. You know, just also be mindful that when you're doing change management, it is painful. Yeah. So you're more than likely going to get conflict. Yeah. And how you're going to collaborate with people. So this is about capturing requirements, doing workshops, making sure that not only are you taking lessons learned, but you're also applying them. Yeah. And that just sort of like gives you a feel of the two qualifications that you may take up. Yeah. And I think this one's a very valid slide. Yeah. It's not the strongest or the most intelligent who will survive, but those who best at manage change. So you can adapt, and you see this in the animal kingdom. So it's exactly the same for organizations. Yeah. So I hope you've enjoyed like a little slice of change management in this hour. Yeah. And I'm sure JP will answer all your questions. Yeah. Yeah. So I hand you over to JP and thank you for attending. It's been great. Yeah. Even though I haven't seen any of you, but I have.
Thanks, Andrea. That was absolutely fantastic overview of change management. I have questions myself, but before we get on to the Q&A side, I apologize for those that have already heard this spiel on our previous overviews, but I just want to simply give you some information about Spoke itself. Essentially, we've been around for 30 years. Our expertise is in project, program, and change management. We are pioneers in the UK for delivering the first ever Prince 2 course, the first MSP course, and the first ever Agile course. We do also operate globally. Now, in regards to the training, Andrea has mentioned some elements of it already, but they are comprehensive learning solutions for the change management methodology course. Okay. All of our trainers are very seasoned within a wide variety of industries, including the NHS and local government. I know there are several people attending this session today from financial institutions, as well as the NHS and local government. So this is first and foremost a very prominent course for those individuals. Now, if you are an individual inquiring on behalf of your company or a team that you have, we do provide in-house training, and that is both virtual and face-to-face. Now, if you're an individual or a self-funder, we do have virtual instructor-led courses, or if you prefer, you can choose a self-paced option, which includes access to an interactive platform. All depends, and it's all about preference. Now, regardless of the choice you choose, the focus will always be with ourselves on immersive learning. Okay, so the groups that we have will be quite small, so it means that you've got a bit more one-on-one time with the trainer during the actual training sessions. If you're taking an e-learning based or self-paced package, you do have access to an online trainer who will respond to your questions. Now, you will also receive the recordings of this session like you have with previous sessions, and you'll also get a Projects with ChatGPT ebook. Now, I think Andrew mentioned it as well. It is an absolutely relevant topic, and it will continue to develop and become more prominent as time goes on. You'll also get a change management glossary and brochure. Okay. Now, in terms of offers for Black Friday, I think a lot of people tend to purchase at this time of year because it is a very economical time of year to purchase, and you can get some pretty good deals. We have 40% off of all courses. Now, if you have attended this session live, you will also receive additional discounts. So please email sales@spoke.com to receive the additional discounts. Okay. You can, again, if you're not so great with exams, you can add an exam safety net bolt onto the package. And ultimately, that gives you another chance if you are not successful the first time. All right. For corporate customers as well, there is 40% off delegate fees on private in-house courses. And again, please inquire by emailing sales@spoke.com. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll move towards the Q&A. Andrea, can you move the presentation slide along? No problems. I'll start the Q&A off actually. First question I've got actually, Andrea, is what are the most common mistakes organizations make when implementing change management initiatives?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think that the most common mistakes that organizations make is they don't look at the history of the organization. So what that means is they're not looking at what has gone previously, and they go, you know what, that's never going to happen on this program and project. And before they know it, they're in the same mistakes because they haven't picked up lessons learned. And a good program manager, project manager, and change manager will sit down and go, what did we learn from previous programs and projects around change management?
And the other thing obviously concerns with AI. One of the main questions that I tend to get asked is how does APMG see the role of AI and automation impacting change management practice?
Oh, that's a really, really difficult one. AI is going to be quite difficult, I think, for it rolling it out for in organizations. I'm just going to give you an example of that. I've been working with a company that's rolling out AI for robotics, and where they're getting rid of people who have had a history in an organization, and their fathers have worked in there, their grandfathers, and it goes back, and you just think that's what the organization is really about, not about robotics. Yeah. So, and there's going to be big change. And people just feel, you know what, why don't we just leave it to the robots? So if you're going on something like that, that is going to be very, very difficult because everyone will think they're going to be made redundant. And I still think you need the skills of human beings going forward. So we'll have to watch that space, as they say.
Projects and programs will always need people. That's the simple way of how I see it. I have another question as well, and then I'll see if anyone else has got questions in the chat. If you do have any questions, please post it into the chat, and then we'll address the question as well. So how does the APMG change management framework align with project management methodologies like Prince2, for example?
Okay. One of the things, the change management is a separate product. However, there are certain things that need to happen on the underside of the project. So such as doing an assessment, skills, audit, understanding how much change is involved, working closely with project managers, whether it be Prince2 or Agile PM. They both go hand in hand. Yeah. And unfortunately, in the real world, what actually happens is if a project doesn't have loads of money, the first thing to go is training. And training is probably the most important thing. Yeah. You know, because if you don't get the training, you're just going to get this box, let's call it that, and go, well, what do I do with the box? And I'm already stressed out just looking at the box. Yeah.
Thank you. And can the framework be tailored to small scale changes, or is it primarily designed for large transformations?
Even moving house is a big change, isn't it? People don't like change in general, you know, even having a new kitchen, a new bathroom, you know, the stress with that. And that's only small. So just be mindful if you're having a new bathroom, hopefully they're only there for about 5 days. But if you're in a program or project, that could be years. Yeah. So the principles still apply. Yeah, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, or just 5 days. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions to add? Any questions regarding the course itself, or any technical questions, any personal experiences, and how it relates to change management? I think we mentioned briefly before, Andrea, that there is a misconception between change control and change management. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, change control is talking about document control. So this is another name for change control that you might be more familiar with is version control. So every time you update a document, it gets a new version. That is change control. Change management is people management. Yeah, taking people through the journey. Big, big difference between the two. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yes. Okay. Here we go. Hi, will you be sharing the PowerPoint presentation with us? Yes, the answer is 100% yes. If you have questions in relation to the presentation, you can also get in touch. You should receive an email from Spoke with this with the copy to this of the slide. There we go. My colleague Suzanne has confirmed that as well. Does anyone else have any other questions to add? Do you have any other questions? Here we go. Steve says, do you see AI being used to automate program plans?
I can't see that happening. And I think when you start using AI, you take the personal bit out of change. one of the things I mentioned is, and I know you use Teams, email, change management is very much face to face. You know, it's about taking people through the journey, body language, understanding what they're going through. I could just actually, just by my body language, give you, without saying anything, would tell you how I felt at that given moment when you've told me all about the change. Yeah. I don't think AI could be able to do that. I don't know. It's something maybe in 20, 30 years' time, but it's certainly not going to be in the next couple of years. Yeah.
Okay, next question from Croft. In terms of stakeholder engagement, would you consider the 80-20 rule, and do you think it is important to consider it?
Oh, 80-20 rule. Yeah. But just also being mindful as you're going along in the program and project, you're going to find new stakeholders, and you also need to be mindful as you go along in the program and project is where you want them to be and want to remain to be, or if they're not in the right position, how you're going to get them into the right position. Also with stakeholders, you may not realize they're a stakeholder, and then they come along and go, you know what, I am a stakeholder. And you go, really? And if that's the case, then that 80-20 rule goes out the window, because you have to include them in your stakeholder map of some shape or form.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Next question is from Ingrid. Do you think working in sprints are more aligned with effective change management? Sounds like an agile twist.
It is an agile question. Yeah. I think it really depends on the organization. Sprints are quite interesting because sprints are meant to be 2 to 4 weeks in length. And the idea, and again, it depends whether you're using Agile, PM or Scrum. But if you're using sprints in its purest sense, in theory, 2 to 4 weeks, you're rolling something out into BAU or your customer facing. I think it's whether the customer or the end user can absorb the change. And it really depends on the complexity. If it's something quite complex and you're rolling something out 2 to 4 weeks, you're just going to get the end user confused. So it might be better to club the sprints together and then allow training to run underneath and then roll it out. So a lot of organizations roll out quarterly rather than in sprint formats. Yeah.
Okay. Croft has come back and basically said, my question is more in relation to whether you focus and prioritize the 80% rather than the 80-20%.
What do they actually mean by?
Yeah. So previous question was, in terms of stakeholder engagement, would you consider the 80-20 rule, and do you think it's important too? And he's also come back and said, my question is more in relation to whether you will focus and prioritize on the 80% specifically.
Oh, that's a bit, we want to take 100% on the journey. That's a very difficult question, because if you have the 20% that's going to cause you major problems, then 80-20 doesn't work. You have to take everyone on the journey. Yeah.
Very good question.
It is a very good question. It is a difficult one. Yeah. What are you going to do with the 20%? If they don't want to come on the journey.
So Croft's also come back with saying 100% is the ideal, but if 80% are more engaged and more geared up for change, you may want to prioritize them. Might you not?
One of the things you need to think about is that 20%, you would need to think about whether they could cause disruption. So let's say 20%, so they're not going to do the change, and that 20% are going to leave the organization. So one of the things that you need to make a decision is, if that 20% left the organization, what would it mean to the change? Have you failed? Yeah. Are they subject matter experts that are business critical? Are they, if that 20% left, would they take all the knowledge? Yeah. So it is a very difficult call on that. And, you know, in the perfect world, you take 100%, or you should plan to take 100%. Yeah.
Very good question.
Very good question. Yeah, it's a difficult one.
Has anyone got any other additional questions to ask at this point? Any queries over the suitability for you as an individual to take this qualification? Because that seems to be a common theme when I discuss this with clients is, are the candidates sitting on this course suitable to take this course? And that kind of brings me on to prerequisites, Andrea. What type of prerequisites, if any, do you require to sit on this course?
I don't think you need any. You'll all be exposed to change in your own lives, moving house, having kids, having a puppy. Yeah, you'll all have been exposed to some sort of change that you can relate to, even if it's not organizational change. Yeah. One of the things that this course in particular is slightly different. If you've done Prince 2 or Agile PM or MSP, this is one that is more about discussions. How could you apply it in your own workplace? Slightly different than the other methodologies that are out there.
So
Yeah.
hearts and minds.
Very much hearts and minds.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. So any final questions before we close the session? Oh, another added part. You can and should plan to take 100%, but time and money are finite. Within a given timescale and budget, difficult decisions will need to be made. Correct. 100%.
Mm-hmm. Just talking about money, one of the things that a lot of organizations don't do is put money aside for change management. And it is going to be a big thing in general terms, because organizations are looking at getting benefits. Yeah. And the only way you're going to get the benefit is take people through the journey. Yeah. And you've got to invest in people, you know, and that costs money, you know.
Well, that was absolutely fantastic, Andrea. Thanks for your time and the presentation being so thorough. I think we got some decent questions in the end there. And there's quite a lot of food for thought. Again, if you've got any questions or any further questions, feel free to post them in the chat before we finish this session. You can get in contact with us direct. Excellent. Very great session. I agree. Thanks, Suzanne. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Andrea.
Bye, everyone.